I think the principle I try to live by, and this goes to business as well as personal, I think that one of the things I always try and think about is the other person and start there. I've actually written a book called the Start with the User, and that's obviously more from a business standpoint, but it's understanding exactly what someone else is going through and starting at that point. I know, like, it's an easy thing to say, but I think that so often people come to be present with their own agendas going on, and it's very focused internally of like, what am I going through? What do I need from this situation? What's going on? And if you reorientate that so that you start with the other person in mind, whether it be advertising, whether it be a personal relationship, and know what the outcome you want to have. Not that I calculate exactly every outcome in a social scenario at all, but if I understand what someone else is going through and really have empathy, not to say that I'm going to understand it completely every single time, because that's a bit difficult to do that, but at least to have empathy towards that scenario, then starting from that position makes everything a lot easier. And that goes for social, personal, as well as advertising as well. And that's kind of probably the principle that I live by. I carried on into university at that point, did 3 years of psychology, and just fell in love with the topic. Absolutely loved psychology. Really dug deep on that, like into my thesis. Very much wanted to see how it could be applied. So wasn't not, I loved learning of psychology and understanding certain things, but I was much more interested in like, okay, now that I know this, what does this actually mean? How can I use this? How can I interpret things? And I did a thesis, or I did a dissertation, a study all about gambling and how people gamble and how their mindset changes when they gamble, when they win, when they lose, what their behavior is like, and how they tend to be risky and not risky, how males are different to females, how different age groups are different. And I just loved kind of understanding the mindset of different people in different scenarios. And then I carried on into my master's doing psychology. And at that point, I started focusing more on sport. So I did a lot of work with golfers to kind of improve their putting performance, and kind of at that point, I'd learned a lot of interventions as well. So things like hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, NLP, those sorts of disciplines, as well as CBT and things. So worked with a lot of golfers to give them certain techniques and strategies that could be applied to the real world. So when they play golf, and every single one of them improved their golf game as a result of just like getting the mental side right. I literally have no clue about how to actually play golf, but I know how to think and teach people how to think in better ways. And so that was like something I really fell in love with. And I kind of continued from there I moved to London at that point. And so I'm based in the UK, as you can probably tell by the accent. And then when I was kind of started my own company, I had to learn how to advertise my company in the good old days of Google AdWords when that first started. And that was great. That was a great time of advertising. Like now, everyone talking about Facebook and Instagram and things. It was like at that time, it was only Google that was the online platform to advertise, and it was just incredible days. Really, really cheap and very cost effective and very, very effective as well. And so that was like all the rage. I learned how to advertise really effectively for my business there. That was like a therapy business. But at the same time, I didn't have the business now or the intelligence really at that point to learn how to scale a business and grow a business. And what I did is I just had my one-to-one time. So I used to work as a psychologist, working with people for normally anxiety-related issues around communication, so public speaking, presentation skills, that type of thing, and just help them become much more confident. But learning how to advertise and then learning how to just do these one-to-one sessions, got ridiculously good at it and booked out my diary. But then I was like, okay, great. Well, there's like 4 months worth of clients booked in, and kind of just all I knew was to raise my prices. That was my strategy, which worked. But I didn't know how to kind of like, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of things like, oh, well, maybe we can get more therapists and I can train those people up and know how to grow my business and maybe franchise it or whatever sort of thing. So I grew the company, but then I remember one day I put a video. I decided to try and create a video when no one was using video at the time. Tried to create a video, recorded it, put it on my website, and I was sending a load of traffic to my website anyway. But with the video, it tripled my conversion rate overnight. And I remember just waking up the next day and thinking, "Oh my God, I've spent too much money on advertising because I've got too many leads coming through." Because it was like really regular numbers at that point. And as soon as the video happened, I tripled my lead count for the same price. And at that point, my business just kind of like went crazy. I started doing workshops and all that sort of stuff. But soon enough, I was like, well, I'm actually doing really well with advertising and video. And my vehicle of making the money of like the psychology aspect was great, but it was tiresome, it's difficult, it's hard work. And I was starting to fall in love and have a new passion for video and advertising. And so at that point, I was like, okay, great, let's get into this field. And it kind of like slowly evolved into that. And then I started getting more and more clients. And that's when the agency kind of like grew out from there, really. So that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing now. And it's always been just, it's not like YouTube advertising, someone's written a handbook on it. And it's not like in the good old days of AdWords, there's no handbook for it either. It's very much being in the trenches and just working it out for myself. It's same with video as well, being online video and things. I was kind of like one of the first in the UK, I think, to even use video on your website. So it was one of those things where I've always just had to kind of learn on my feet. And I think that's led me down this path of YouTube advertising, and it's been a great place to be. But it's still, there's no manual. So it's kind of like, whereas Facebook trainings left, right, and center, everything, and people can follow the strategies and things. I kind of look at advertising a slightly different way of like, what do I actually want to do? What's my, like, the actual tactic of how to get this ad in front of someone is less important for me, because I know I'll work that one out. It's more a case of, how do I actually want to communicate? What do I want to say to this person? What's going to compel them to take action? Because once I learn the strategy and the technique of like how to get this ad in front of someone, that bit's cool, and I can learn that bit because it's like pressing buttons and it's the techie side of things. But it's got to start with that side of things of like understanding the human element of it, the actual communication you have with somebody. If you get that bit right, then everything else becomes easy. If you can get people to be compelled by your message that you have for them, they think, I mean, what we try and do with every single video ad that we create is to get someone to be like, wow, that was incredible. I'm so glad I saw that video ad. What do I do next? And if you get people to have that type of mentality and that type of psychology in the video ad, and people actually want to do business with you at the end of the video, it makes everything else so much easier. You can run that on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It doesn't matter, because if you get that message in front of the right people at the right time, then, and you have a good product or good service to provide to people at that point, then everything becomes easy. So that's kind of our mantra, is like, try and be there in front of a customer, but also be really useful to that customer as well, because then the sales process becomes very easy. Like what I said at the start of the podcast, it's like understanding what someone's going through. Now, there's so much data out there to allow us to know what people are going through, but a little bit of interpretation of that data really helps. So let's take YouTube, for example. People go to YouTube because they want to either know something, do something, buy something, or be inspired by something. Those are the 4 reasons why people go to YouTube. And if you know what they've typed in recently, let's say, for example, they typed in how to speak in public, let's say, because that was my previous business. If someone's typed that in, AdWords, or the platform that you advertise with YouTube on, will tell you that. They'll say, okay, look, if you want to get in front of people when they typed in how to speak in public, you can do that. And then you choose that methodology. So it's a keyword campaign. And you say, right, now I know if I get a video in front of these people, these are the people that have just typed in how to speak in public. So what you need to do at that point is make sure you create a video that's teaching people how to speak in public. Like, give them like 2 or 3 really good tips. Stuff that, not like generic, make sure you stand with your straight back or anything stupid like that. It's much more a case of, okay, here's 3 really effective strategies that will make you speak really effectively. Like, it could be like, here's a real quick way to learn how to structure your content in the most effective way. Here's a way to reduce those anxieties in the first 2 minutes. And here's a new way to think about presentations. So the whole process becomes so much easier. If you can give them 3 tips and actually just walk it through so people get it, then by the end of the video, like, those 3 tips are better than anything I've ever seen about public speaking before. And if you say to them, hey, if you like this stuff, we've actually got a free webinar that's going on that's going to go into much more detail about this. Or it could be, if you're a one-to-one coach, you can say, hey, if you like this stuff, you should come and book a session with me, or come to one of my free events, or whatever you might have that's the next logical step for someone to take. And it's really just making sure that you start with the user. Think about, if you were that person who have just typed in how to speak in public, what would you put together for that person? Because let's face it, like, hundreds of thousands of people are typing in that every single year, or every single month probably. And so if your ad gets in front of them and they have a good experience and they have that good user experience, then the chances of them actually turning into a customer is so much more likely. And so it's just identifying these moments that people go through. So if they typed in how to speak in public, that's one thing. If they said how to reduce the anxiety of public speaking, or public speaking fears, or those sorts of keywords, then you can say, great, well, these people are the people that are fearful of public speaking. Let's give them some advice. And if you want to get really clever about it, you can segment it based on device as well, or even by gender as well. So you can say a female on their mobile phone is likely to be different from a male on their desktop computer, because a female on a mobile phone, and my job as an agency owner is to make judgment calls every now and again. So not that I want to be stereotypical or anything like that. I just look at it from a standpoint of like a female on her phone or a male on a phone, whatever it might be, they're going to have less time. Like on a mobile, they want stuff that's pretty quick compared to like if they're on a desktop, because the mentality is like if you're sitting at a desktop, you're probably in work mode. You're probably ready to give it a bit more time. If you're on your mobile, things could be distracting. And so with a mobile ad, you might want to give some like really good tips away real quick, and then something where they can kind of do the next step really quickly with you as well. Sign up for a webinar that's going to happen tonight or something. That's easy because it's like, great, I can do that. I'll log in later. Or download a PDF. Fine, I've done that real quick. Whereas if you're on a desktop, you might be like, actually, I'm ready to go and buy something if I need to. So you've got different mentalities, but if you really know what you can segment on, then it means you can understand what sort of message you want to have. So your message for a male typing in how to speak in public on a desktop computer, you might think, okay, well, what ideally would I want to say to that person? Whereas if it's a female on the desktop computer, you might think, okay, what do I want to say to that person? And the message might be different. Like you might want to have a different message based on that gender factor or the age factor as well. It could be like, okay, what would I say to an 18 to 24-year-old versus a 50 to 60-year-old, for example. 50 to 60-year-old might be more of like a meeting, a presentation. An 18 to 24-year-old might be an interview. It might be a presentation at university, for example. So you're just kind of like understanding what people are going through and try and give them a user experience that connects with that in the best possible way, because then you're going to grab their attention. You're going to get their kind of like eyeballs watching your video and actually want to find out more about what it is you do as a business. The number of times we go onto YouTube and we want to press skip ad is because we see some sort of car commercial with it driving up the mountainside, and we're not even interested in cars. Do you know what I mean? When you see that sort of ad, it's just like, oh god, another a classic corporate brand awareness campaign, and it's frustrating, it's annoying, and you press skip ad straight away. We have an ad that we run with our guitar client. When they watch his ads, the comments underneath his ad are like, this is the best ad I've ever seen. This is so cool. This is really exciting. I love this ad. I bought based on this one ad. And the way we do it is because we wait until people type in how to play guitar, how to play blues, jazz, or guitar, how to, like, we know what people are typing in. What I think for a smaller business, ROI is like the number one thing, but also at the same time, user experience is the way to get there, sort of thing. So instead of saying, and this is like the spray and pray approach that a lot of brands have, it's like one ad to everybody. And what I'm saying is like multiple ads to multiple moments that people are going through. So every time you do turn up, you're being super relevant. Now, of course, like if you can still advertise by interests, but then you've got to be a little bit more creative about how you're going to run that ad. So if we say, right, we know these people are like movie lovers, for example, and you're Netflix and you're advertising, then in that scenario, you know you're getting in front of a relevant audience based on their interests. So you can still do like rather like what you would do with Facebook. But in that scenario, again, you need to be a little bit more creative, and that's where creative ads, so not necessarily demonstration ads for products or content like driven ads for search behavior, where that fits really well for services. When you're looking to say, all right, I want to get in front of a much bigger audience based on their interest, they might not be searching for it right now, but we know they would be interested, like movie lovers or dog lovers or people with pets or whatever it might be. Those are the interest groups you can target on YouTube. When you do that, that's the sort of thing where you say, okay, we know they're going to be slightly interested in our ad, but maybe we need to be a bit funny, or maybe we need to like raise something a little bit more kind of like that people are going to start thinking about. So you kind of get that brand awareness out there. They get compelled by like, hey, that was a cool video. I like that. I wasn't looking for it, but it's still a cool video. Because at that point, you've primed them basically. So you're like, hey, I love that. And then through remarketing or what's called retargeting on Facebook, it's exactly the same thing. But you can take all those video viewers who loved your video, maybe they commented or liked it or subscribed or just watched it for a period of time. You can segment that audience and say, all right, we'll follow those people up with this ad that's a bit more, precisely, yeah, exactly, yeah. So they call it remarketing. Yes, it's exactly the same thing. But so you can do it off the video views, which is really cool. So like sometimes you're thinking, I don't want to just have like a straight sales ad to an audience that could be interested. I prefer to give them a really, really good experience, not really have too much of a call to action, but just say, hey, look, hopefully you love that ad. And now let's follow those people up with remarketing. And I would say that there's a lot of companies out there that advertise in a very effective way. There's a lot of companies out there who advertise in a very poor way. But it's all coming back for me to go back to the user experience. It's the way up of like user experience and ROI are not mutually exclusive, and they shouldn't be. They should be tied in with each other. So the best way to get a viral video out there that people absolutely love is to create a video that people love, but also does a really good job of selling. Because then if you know that you put $1 into that ad and you get $2 back from your return, you're like, well, we can make it go viral via just spending money now. And so we've got lots of videos out there that have got like 5 million plus video views, because they're working, because we can keep on spending money on them and people love the video. I mean, you don't have the fatigue thing that you do have on Facebook. With YouTube, it's like we're constantly in front of people who are looking for this information anyway. Whereas with Facebook, you're bombarding an audience who have basically got an interest. At some point, they're going to be like, I've seen this in my newsfeed too many times, I'm just going to skip past it, and it thus becomes a little bit too expensive, and therefore that fatigue kicks in. So you can build these really nice user experience journeys, whereby with YouTube they might see one of your ads, then we make sure they don't see it again, and then because we can exclude that audience from seeing it more than once, and then say, right, we'll follow them up with a second video, and then we'll follow them up with a third video. So we have this like cascading or sequence of events where we decide how that story is played out. And when you do that, then you can get really creative with what your message wants to be. So it all comes back to like, what do we actually want to do with a customer? Like, and the best way of doing this is to imagine like we don't have the internet. Imagine if we had like a physical store and we had customers coming to us every single day. What would we say to them? How would we bring them into the store? How would we communicate with them? What would you say to make them like feel like that's such a cool experience? I'm definitely gonna come back to this store again. If you can build that in to your video ad campaign, and then that's kind of what I want to do, but I want to do it online now. Obviously, that means that things have got to change a little bit. There's boundaries that can change slightly, but at that point, you're going with the right mentality to go and advertise. And that's what I think the real trick is to advertising, is to say, how do we treat this person in the best possible way? And now how do we actually make that work online? If you come with that mentality and then you figure it out, how you actually deliver that kind of like those ads, then as a result, you find that you get really, really good ROI. And it's not down to a simple trick or a strategy or what's working now. It's kind of like, let's look at this from a bigger picture. Let's look at what we actually want to say. What do we want to do with, like, how do we want to give our kind of like ads and our value to people that's going to be relevant and helpful for them? If you get that bit right, then conversion just follows along nicely anyway. The more relevant you can be, the less creative you need to be, because let's say, for example, if you were to think about the first time you got into podcasting and you were to play that customer journey backwards to be like, all right, now you're live with your podcast, right? And you go all the way back, there would have been a point at which you thought, how do I promote my business, maybe? Or how do I get out there? How do I get people to know about me, maybe? And then you follow that line along to be like, all right, well, now I need to get a microphone. What's the best microphone for podcasting? Then you might be like, how to do a podcasting show, or whatever you would like, all those like interview techniques and all those types of things, or interview techniques for podcasts, for example. If you play it backwards and you think about all these different things that your customers would be typing in or would have typed in, you can then be there for them when they need you to be. And if you're relevant in those places as well, they're going to fall in love with you. So let's say, for example, someone types in best podcasting microphone sort of thing, and they see a video of you. You're not selling your podcasting course. All you're saying is that, all right, let me talk you through 3 of the best podcasting microphones, why some of them are really good, why them like the different prices, and what way you want to get started with things. You just give them really good content. And at the end of it, you're like, hey, look, I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you're interested in podcasting. Oh, and by the way, I've actually got a course on podcasting if you're interested. You can click here to find out much more. So a really soft call to action. But you've given amazing advice, but you do it for every single moment that they were thinking about podcasting. So how do I ask questions on a podcast? How do I get the best guests on my podcast? Anything like that. You keep on showing up and giving them really good advice. And you keep on just subtly letting them know about the fact that you've got a podcasting course. They're going to be like, this guy keeps on popping up. It keeps on giving me really good advice. Like, why would they go and buy from someone else now? They're going to want to go and buy from you because they know that your content's amazing. They're going to be like, I already have an affinity with you. I know who you are. I like your stuff. I trust you. and your podcasting course is only this price, it's like, sweet, let's do it. And that's exactly like the mentality you want to have. Like, keep on turning up, being useful, being valuable, and then it's this evergreen system that's working for you. It's like content marketing on steroids in a way. I hate using that phrase, on steroids, but I said it, so there we go. But it's that type of thing, right? It's kind of like you're making sure you're amplifying your content to get in front of people at the right time, so they just keep on building this brand awareness of you, but loving your stuff. And then the whole process becomes easy. Otherwise, with someone like Facebook, and I'm not going to say that Facebook's not great, because it is amazing, but it's just you have to take a different approach with Facebook. You're getting in front of people who are interested in podcasting, but you don't know if they're already doing their podcast, or if they're just thinking about it, or think, oh, I'm just interested in it. I probably will never run one, but I'm slightly interested in it. And so you're getting in front of all that audience, and you don't know where they are in their buying journey. It's difficult to isolate that. If we take this offline for a second and imagine you had like a podcasting store, for example, it's like you're on podcasting street. So anyone who's walking on that street is kind of interested in podcasting, but you're the guy almost shouting outside of your store, hey, come and check this stuff out. We've got some amazing stuff over here on Facebook. Whereas on YouTube, you're like, hey, welcome to the store. How can I help you? Do you know what I mean? It's a very different mentality with the advertising. So when they come in the store, you know what questions they've got, you know how to actually answer them, and they're close to making a purchasing decision as well. So it's just a different feel. If you know that you're going to go after a podcasting audience and you're going to turn up and be relevant with your ads, you now know also what offer's going to resonate with them, right? So you know they're in research mode, they've got time, and if you have a webinar that goes through absolutely everything they need to know before running a podcast, they'll be like, oh my god, I should definitely be on that podcast. That's on that webinar. That sounds like it's the perfect scenario for me, and they've got the time to commit to it as well. Whereas something like for me, I'm selling my agency, for example, when I kind of do advertising. In that scenario, sure, people might be interested in a webinar just to learn a little bit more information, but really they just want to contact us and have a chat with one of our team. Or we've actually got a quiz on our website that says, hey, find out if YouTube ads is going to work for you, because that's the next logical thing that people actually want to know. And so that's so many people try and crowbar in an offer because they've been told by some internet marketing guru, like, oh, you must have this. It's like, start with the user, start with the customer. What are they looking for? What do they actually want? And give them that. And it's not hard to think of a user experience, because it's like, just go offline for a second. Imagine what it would be like if we didn't have the internet and you had a physical store. Go back 50 years and think, right, what would be the best way to give someone an amazing experience? And now let's translate that to online. Online is like an adaptation of the offline world, really. It's got so much more capability, of course, but it's don't forget those principles of psychology of a human who wants something prior to making a purchase. It doesn't matter if it's offline, online. Our mindset does not change a huge amount. So it's trying to deliver that perfect user experience and knowing what ad's going to resonate, know what offer's going to be right for them. And then conversion becomes really, really simple. If you give it a really amazing advice in a video ad and don't try and sell, and then you have a webinar that says, hey, just sign up here, you don't need to have a huge amount on that webinar page to sell it, because they're like, I've already got great experience from you. Now I'm on the webinar page opting in because I actually want to find out more about the stuff you just told me about in the video ad. So salesmanship kind of goes out the window slightly. You don't need to be a really good salesperson to work with ads on YouTube. You just need to be relevant and show up at the right time with good content. And then everything else just flows. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that podcast. And if you want to get more information and more great content just like that, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. You'll see the button on the video right now.